Thank you very much, Jason. Thanks for the introduction and the fun fact. I shan't be singing today. I'll be presenting. Check Spotify. I won't be singing UK is okay today. Well, good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am really, really excited to be here and to be talking to you about an important subject. And that is Revolution, please. The title says Reforming Cybersecurity Culture in Higher Education. There are two important points I want to talk about today. And that's about the need to have a partnership between academia and industry. Having a partnership between public sector and the private sector. And once we're able to do that, we'll be able to come up with interesting solutions, interesting innovations that can help us in protecting or securing assets, not only in higher education institutions, but also in different industry sectors. Also, I would also like to talk about the importance of developing a cyber-aware culture in our institutions, in our organizations. Again, we'll be able to know what is expected of us in terms of security behavior, and then we have a secure environment. And as we know, and according to my research, there's also a cyber culture revolution that is needed in higher education institutions. So the direction in which I'll be going today, I'll be talking about the challenges in the education sector, the importance of cybersecurity culture. I'll be looking into cybersecurity culture in higher education institution, talked about cyber breaches a little bit, and then talk about the need to have a revolution in higher education institution. And then next, I'll talk about the research which I did, and I will try and wrap it up there. So, our introduction. Higher education institution is an important sector in higher education institution. In fact, we can refer to it as a critical network infrastructure because of its importance. And it's a place which you can refer to as a citadel of knowledge, citadel of knowledge, whereby you have intellectual properties of ideas, intellectual property of products and services. You know, there are places where they are generated. And in terms of the United Kingdom, the higher education institution themselves, they contribute over 95 billion to the economy. That supports in England over 815 jobs. And also, we know that higher education institution houses a wealth of information about people, information about research, information about maybe projects with MOD, with COVID-19 research, and so on and so forth. And also, there is a duty of care which higher education institution have to protect the data of their subject, the staff, the student, which have the highest population in higher education institution. However, there are some challenges, there are some problems that needs to be addressed, that need to be solved. And there is a research that was done by Roa from KnowBe4, and they found that they looked at different industry sectors. They looked at 17 of them. And they found out that the education sector have the lowest security score, you know, and they're one of the lowest. Also, you have the transportation and also the energy sector, oil and gas, where I used to work. It's also found that higher education institutions are not well prepared to address or to tackle the problems of cybersecurity breaches if and when they occur. There is a GISC research, and they did a study, and they found out that within 2 hours, by conducting a penetration test, they are able to break in through the system of higher education institution and have access to their high-value data just within 2 hours. So there is the need to have something done in this area. And also, the cyber attacks are not abating. They continue to occur. However, well, before then, in higher education institution and in other industry sector, there have been a lot of reliance on technical solutions. So having the firewall in place, malware protection, and so on and so forth. But there is a need to have something that will complement that effort. And that's where the human aspect of cybersecurity comes in, looking at cybersecurity culture itself. So a definition. Cybersecurity culture is the intentional and unintentional manner in which cyberspace is utilized from an international, national organization, or individual perspective in the context of attitude. So you're talking about the behavior, the assumptions, and the values. So we can refer to cybersecurity culture as the way in which things are done in terms of engaging in the cyberspace. So we're looking at behavior, what are our values, and so on and so forth. So cybersecurity culture, with what I've said, we know that this is an important, it's an important domain. And we can use cybersecurity culture or the awareness of cybersecurity culture, the development of cybersecurity culture in an organization to reduce the risk of human error. We know that it's proven, there's a research to indicate that over 90% of the error or the cybersecurity breaches that occur, they are linked to human error. So that points to the fact that this is an important domain that we all need to be passionate about, and also is a way of complementing the technical solutions. And we know also that there are the research in this area is scarce. There are lack of empirical evidence in this area. So that's the reason and my motivation for looking into this this research topic. Taking a closer look at higher education institutions, the sector itself, it's quite unique. Implementing technical controls have some challenges in higher education institutions. If you compare it to the industry, if you look at banking, for example, you have a culture in banking which is termed the bureaucratic culture. And, that's characterized by following procedures and processes, and people wouldn't complain about it. Or they may complain, but they may not necessarily voice it out that much. But if you look at higher education institutions, you have a culture that is referred to as anarchic individualistic culture. And that's characterized by people wanting to want to be involved with things that concerns them. So you want to introduce technical control. Why do you want to do it? And it's the same culture you will see in legal firms. They want to be involved. They want to know what goes wrong. And it's important to know that if they are carried along, and, if security professionals carry them along, there's a high likelihood that they will comply with expectations. So as I said, there's over-reliance on technical controls, and higher education institutions continue to be a target. So there's a need for us to have the human aspect of security in the mix of of solutions. So there have been HEI have become targets, and they continue to do so. There have been breaches recorded in different universities, Manchester, SOAS University of London, Northampton, and so on and so forth. Even the Information Commissioner Office have fined an institution 120,000 or so in 2018. So there is a there is a need to pay attention to this area. And also, it's also reported the silent Liberian attacks that come from outside of the United Kingdom itself. The stolen pencil, which target academics trying to, through spear phishing, trying to trick them into downloading a Chrome extension. So there is the need to look at this area. There's a need for a step change in our approach to cybersecurity culture. So I did 2 studies looking at this area, looking at behavior and perception of cybersecurity culture in UK higher education institutions. So my main question was to find out what are the behaviors and perceptions that affect cybersecurity culture in UK higher education institution, and looking at the industry and also looking at higher education institution. Obviously, there are challenges, there are differences there in terms of how things are done, and the differences, as I explained earlier, relates to the difference in the culture that exists in these sectors. So there's a need to have a revolution. Revolution itself here, it's not a figure of speech or a cliche. When you talk about revolution, there's a need. There are some keywords that comes to mind. If you look at different revolutions that have taken place in generations, French Revolution, American Revolution, you have mass mobilization. You have a change. Change needs to take place. So while we may not be protesting here, but there's we need to come together as experts, practitioners, academics, research, the government. We need to work together. There needs to be a concerted effort in trying to overcome this challenge and keeping our industries secure. So the word revolution, that's the Latin word for revolution, and it talks about a rapid and fundamental transformation. So there needs to be a transformation. There needs to be a turnaround. So my first study, I looked at 3 universities in the United Kingdom, and I tried to answer the question, what influences people's views of cybersecurity culture in such institutions. So I interviewed 19 people, 19 participants, 7 professional services staff, the admin staff. I interviewed academics, 6 of them, and then vice chancellors, 3 of them, and then 3 PhD students. And this study has been published, and they are available. You can scan to get some to get that paper. And some of the findings that came out are that communication necessary to influence cybersecurity culture is lacking in different areas. If you look at even the IT professional trying to communicate with users, they found out that communication is unclear. They say communication is impersonal, and there is a lack of understanding in that area. Also, there are no clear policy, and this was influenced by not having good or clear cybersecurity strategies. So something linked with IR management, and also the IT expectations are not well defined. Some of the users say, I keep getting this information from IT. What do you want me to do with it? So things are not clear. And also, lastly, these are just a brief summary. There are more findings, but this is just a summary. I have some of the stuff which I will be sharing in newsletter that are right. So regarding training, there are no onboarding security training. An area which is quite important, and that's about social engineering training. And that's not there for students and even for some staff. And if we're looking at this area of cybersecurity culture, the human aspect of security, we need to do something about this area. And then looking at the first study, there are also some interesting findings that came out, and that's in relation to challenges between the IT team and academics. Academics wanted to offer their expertise to IT staff, but they're not willing to take that. There are some challenges in that area. But also, the professional services staff, the admin staff felt, the academic staff have a little understanding about cybersecurity culture. So those are some of the findings. And that was the motivation for me to look into the second study, which focused on purely on academic staff. And I looked at, I interviewed people, academics from 6 universities, and that cuts across the different institutions you have in the United Kingdom. I have 2 from the Russell Group, 2 from the pre-1992 university that had their status before the 1992 University Act, and then the 2 other universities which are former polytechnics, that got their university status after 1992. And also, the academics also come from a broad spectrum. So I looked at academics from economics, engineering, pure sciences, and so on and so forth. So the whole of the university, the courses, the disciplines were covered in that way. Now, there was an interesting finding which came up when I was doing this study. It happened during the pandemic. And I thought that, I'll be able to have more participants than the 37 people which I had. But it was quite shocking that, people are not quite engaging in that space. So these are some of the findings. There are complexity and disagreements within higher education institutions. So when you look at the implementation of cybersecurity controls and how they are implemented, academics felt, the solutions that were implemented hinder them in conducting their activities, their research. Also, external and internal factors affect cybersecurity culture. And an external factor is the COVID-19, which was totally unexpected. And that influenced the kind of approach that was taken in our education institution. Communication and user engagement also, it was found that they are needed to foster cybersecurity culture in our education institution. Again, leadership is another key findings that came out. So here are some comments that were made by academics. The first one talked about the sporadic attempts to put security in. People are working from home, so they are implementing different solutions, and they felt, this stood in their way of them conducting their work. There is another one, the last one, which I find it quite interesting. This particular individual professor said, to be quite honest, if the provost said to us that one day I want you to start using a particular tool, he said, we'll just ignore him, And that's to tell you the culture that exists in our education institution. And also you have people who are trained, academics who are trained to be critical in their thinking. They won't just accept anything that is pushed at them without asking questions, So they say, the person said, this is not how things work in our education institutions. So coming to the home run, here are some key recommendations. There is a need to have a clear strategy and direction, and this is to be championed by higher education institutions leaders. There's a need to focus on cybersecurity training, also looking at the the social engineering training in addition to that. Also, there needs to be engagement. People need to be involved. I talked about the individualistic culture, and the characteristics is to have people involved, to have their buy-in. And if we have that, we'll be able to move things forward in terms of solutions. So, main takeaway. In conclusion, higher education is a unique sector, and it requires the understanding of the environment, understanding the subculture of the different groups, academics, leaders, professional services staff, and for us to be able to implement solutions, interventions successfully, we need to be aware of this. We need to be conscious of this. Also, leaders are to prioritize strategy development, and then, there's a need. Lastly, there's a need to engage. There's a need to have a reform in cybersecurity culture. There's a need for us to engage together, industry and academia, public sector and private sector, so that we'll come together and secure information assets in a various sectors, because whatever happens in higher education, can affect all of us all. So that's it in a nutshell, and thank you very much.
So, questions. I mean, I'm slightly offended at Tai's finding that academics are a pain in the bum. But here and then on that side and then the front. So at the back.
Hi, Tai. Thank you very much. My name's Tom. I've been working in this space for a number of years. I found it really useful to work with behavioural scientists, and I wonder if you've considered having a collaboration with some of the behavioural scientists at Royal Holloway to look at how best to implement or improve a security culture in the higher education environment.
Well, we're hoping to. We can have a conversation. Yes, there's the more the merrier. There's a opportunity. There are opportunities there for us to collaborate and also to be able to move things forward in terms of bringing about solutions and innovative ideas in this space. So thank you for that, and yes, cool.
Great. That's an easy one. To the right here, and then at the front, and then we can go at the back.
Hello.
Hi.
You mentioned one of your slides to need a minimum human error. Could you comment more on that? Because one of the things still people lacking is passwords. Like, what was the last time when you changed your password, right?
Sorry,
and
can you come back again? I didn't hear the first aspect of the question.
The question about minimizing human error. Could you comment more on that? As example regarding passwords, because like people are lazy and we don't change often passwords, or most people doesn't use password management. How would you, let's say, comment regarding that?
Well, it's important for us to continue to learn and also to continue to share. A point which I'll make, and then I'll address your question. Regarding the last comment about the particular professor saying they will ignore the provost, for example, for that to work properly, communication works best when it comes from those who are close to the user. So if you have, like Claire said earlier, if you have cybersecurity champions, maybe an academic, if it was said in a team meeting, for example, they were more likely to listen to that as opposed to maybe an IT team, which is a mile away. So in terms of the question that you talked about the human error, it's important for us to continue to learn. So what for example, maybe you're in an institution or in an industry, or you're a practitioner, sharing in teams, sharing with people within your circle. Encouraging people to use password manager, for example. So we continue to dialogue, to continue to collaborate, share ideas. I think in that way we'll be able to we'll be able to reduce, human error. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sorry, at the front. And then at the back.
Sorry, I think I stole someone's question. But I think the point you made about the individualistic culture within higher education is really interesting. And my question is, do you feel like the repercussions of potentially having a security incident in higher education is felt by those individuals? Because, for example, in private industry, when there is a security incident, it could potentially affect revenue and then potentially affect bonuses, potentially affect jobs. Whereas in higher education, how can I say this politely? I feel like it's very hard to be... It's not necessarily, when there is a security incident, I don't feel like there's a lot of repercussions on the business because it's government funded. I don't feel like there's going to be layoffs or bonuses are affected.
So there are. Thanks for that question. If there is a security breach, it affects the reputation of the institutions. You could have people who have, who've maybe thought, oh, I'll go to University of X, but after the incident was publicized and they said, the information of the student and the staff and information about their health, was shared in the dark web, there's a chance that you have people who will say that I won't go to that university, I'll go somewhere else. So it's got a way of affecting, it can affect reputation in that space, in that way. It can also affect revenue. And one of the reasons why, you have in some university they are tougher on this area is because they're thinking about the bottom line. They're thinking about, attracting students. So I think it affects institution. And as you have incident being publicized now, we heard about the British Museum, British Library, the incident that occurred in October 2023. There are also incidents in other universities, even if you look in the US, some universities have had to pay ransom, but in the United Kingdom, the NCSC advised against that, and yeah.
So, sorry, you finished?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm really offended now that...
Sorry,
James. Not with you, I mean with the question. And the fact that universities can operate with impunity and don't have to worry about the bottom line. Anyone that is unsure about it, universities these days are very much worried about the bottom line. I think it was, yes, Neil.
Hello, Neil Sinclair. Just to put it in perspective, I've been doing sort of cyber awareness for 8 years now, and I predominantly go into schools and talk to children from the age of 4 to 18 about their cyber awareness. Both yourself and Claire have talked about culture, touched on it. And I just wonder if there is academic study that needs to focus rather than upwards and inwards, but downwards. Because if we talk about culture, then surely culture starts at a very early age. And it's too late when we're in our workplace to tell us that we should be using password manager, that we should be using multi-factor authentication, that we should actually respect what the IT team tells us, and just because they treat us like idiots. That's been developed from the age of 4. So is there study that is looking to help the education sector rather than help the people who have already been educated?
I am aware that in Norway, for instance, they've looked into studies like that, and they have national cybersecurity framework, and they're looking at getting young people to start at an early age, to become aware of cybersecurity and education in that space. I also think there are also initiatives in the UK that are looking into schools, but I'm not 100% sure whether they go up to the age of 4, for example. I know a professor in the University of Kent is also going into schools. They're doing it. There is an initiative there, even in collaboration with the NCSC. So this is an area that, that could also be looked into, and even if it's there, are there ways of bringing improvement? Are there ways in which it could even be taken into maybe other nations, and and so on and so forth? Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, good question. There is one at the back, and then I will come here for the last one. This back, this side, this back.
Hi. Oh, where are we?
Sorry, the back on my right.
Yeah. Hiya, Tai. Thanks for that. I was working in the university sector as well. A lot of what you said resonated with me. Do you have any tips about how to actually measure culture? So you talked about obviously like how important culture is. Look at that. Do I get something free for that, or what? Do I get a prize?
Look, we did not set that up.
No, not at all. I promise
we did not.
So just about, obviously, like a culture in an organisation, and then introducing a cyber culture. If it jars too much with the existing culture, then it doesn't sit. So how do you measure what the existing culture is to start with, and then how do you measure how your cyber culture is going? Does that question make sense?
It makes sense. Get that book. Thanks for the question. It's quite interesting. This is also another area that more research is needed in terms of measuring culture, because culture itself might be a little bit difficult to measure. But there are some observable aspects of culture that we can measure. It could be challenging, it could be costly. It may mean, for example, we will try and find out, if we're looking at clear decks policy, for example, somebody going around, at the end of the day and saying, okay, what has happened here? How many people clear their desk? And then people begin to take data. So, but this paper will be an important one to look at. But there's a need to have more research in that area as well. Thanks for the question.
Great. So let's do one here and then one on the, yep.
I absolutely loved your talk, by the way. And me here, by the way. And the culture is super important. I've done the PhD around the security culture in a physical organization where their job is to deliver money from A to B. They get attacked every day. And why do they then break the rules and the compliance? Is because there are just too many of them. And then the productivity gets on the way. So it is the us and them, with the workers on the low ground, the management on the top. And I wonder if you experienced that. Did you see on the education sector of maybe the IT is the them, and then there is the us, the little...
Thanks for the question. Around COVID, they implemented different security controls because people are working from home. And from the research I did, I found that there's a possibility of directive coming from the head, considering reputation damage and the cost that can come, both direct or indirect, as a result of fines. They must have told, or they must have given directions to IT staff to implement certain controls which affected, in terms of the access control management, so which affected people who work from home, the academics. So they try to implement this.
The shadow IT comes around, right?
Right.
They're going to go around the rules and do their own thing just to be productive. Well,
I think it's more of they get in the direction, and also because they're also thin on the ground. People who work in IT, they were, they had to rush through certain security implementation controls because there's an overnight shift from physical tuition, for example, into a virtual kind of mode in terms of education delivery. So that created some conflict in terms of maybe compatibility because of the system, that they are trying to introduce. So I think that was there, but they had to also follow the rules. They also need to look at, their reputation. Nobody wants to be in the news, for example. They've had instances where people, organizations, or even universities have been fined, so they don't want to fall into that category. But there's a need to have an understanding of this area of people coming together, different disciplines. And the interesting point, you have the higher education institution. There's no reason why one of the most secure places should not be higher education institution because of the wealth of understanding, expertise, that you have in that domain. So, but that's not the case. So there's a need for us to have a revolution. There needs to be things need to be reformed in that area in the way we implement security.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tai. And then one last question on my left. Yes. You have the microphone. Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi. So I've been sat here for quite a while. Yeah, I come at this from a slightly different angle, and I'm not sure I necessarily agree with some of the things that you've said. And the reason I say that is because I've got a lot of kids. The youngest one has recently just graduated from university. I've got a sister who's a teacher. One of my daughters is a teacher. And they would say that the security culture isn't good at the top of education. And it's not the students. They would willingly embrace it. Obviously, I'm in security, so I ask them about it all the time. And they tell me that there's nobody putting these security controls in place. And from another point of view, when I've been trying to sell into higher education, security control validation services and pen testing services, it all comes down to budget. Right? I don't see that there's a culture of young people not wanting to embrace security. I think it's perhaps aligned to this gentleman over here where he said there's no appetite for them to do it. Would you possibly agree, or would you disagree?
Well, good point you raised there. My daughter once told me that I am not sure whether anyone of my age are quite interested in cybersecurity as you talk about it, But the point you made there, like in revolution, it needs to, we need to look at different areas. So we need to have a culture shift. Definitely, well, it will come from leadership because they need to provide the budget. And if we look into higher education institution, even outside of the United Kingdom, in Europe, in Malaysia, the challenge they have is that of reduction in budget, and it affects the security controls that could be put in. And I think it's reasonable to also feel that, this might affect schools as well. So the whole point of us coming together, not just the public sector, the private and the public sector, but also the government also coming into this space and assisting by providing, budget that will help to address this issue. A point also that came out in my research is some of the users says, well, we'll gladly comply with security expectations. Even some academics say this is our area. Those who work in cybersecurity, they said they wanted to comply. They will follow rules if they're reasonable. So people want to comply. People want to do the right thing, but it's important for them to. It's important that it be made easy. They have access to what they need to use to secure the asset. They need to have the training, the needed awareness, having social engineering training, for example, and supporting also SMEs that are involved in this space because they're able to reach, people in their different spheres. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's thank Tai once again.
Thank you. Thank you.